Welcome to Holistic Health for Happy Kids, the podcast where we dive into the root causes of children's health challenges and explore natural solutions to help little ones thrive. I'm Lisa, a passionate paediatric naturopath and mum of 3, dedicated to empowering parents with practical tips and expert insights to raise healthy, happy kids. Each episode will unpack common childhood health concerns like allergies, eczema, fussy eating, and gut health, and share evidence-based advice to support your child's wellness naturally. Let's create a generation of thriving children, one holistic step at a time. Thank you for joining me on this journey. Today we're going to be talking about hormones and high school, navigating teen health. And I'm delighted to welcome back Kelly today, one of the naturopaths at the Paediatric Naturopath, to talk to us about this. And I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old girl, so I am obviously extremely interested to hear what Kelly has to say about this. So hello, Kelly, and thank you for joining us again.
Hello.
So what time or what age do you think hormonal issues start to kick in for girls?
So this is actually a lot earlier than many people think. If we talk about current averages, so for example, most girls in Australia get their first period between age 10 and 15. I think in Australia, the average age typically is 12, and hormonal changes often begin years before a first period. So the first sign of hormonal activity actually becomes noticeable during a period that not many of us have heard of, called adrenarche, and this is when we get a rise in adrenal androgens long before our ovaries start producing hormones. So this happens at around 6 to 8 years old, and you can notice a change in body odor, oilier skin and hair, and mood changes with increased irritability and sensitivity. So it can be pretty young. And then at around 8 to 10, ovaries start producing estrogen, and we'll see the appearance of breast buds, maybe a height growth spurt. And at this time, it's really common to see heightened anxiety and emotional variability due to this fluctuating estrogen. And for those of us my age, this is just like perimenopause, which is our second puberty, another time of wildly fluctuating estrogen. So very common to start seeing some mood shifts and mood dysregulation issues around then. Girls will often commonly get a clear or whitish discharge around this time as well, which is the vagina responding to the estrogen. And then the first period after you're sort of seeing this kind of discharge is often 6 to 12 months away.
Okay.
And then just before your first period, there are some really rapid hormonal changes, and this is where you might see some PMS symptoms, even if they haven't had their first period yet. Bloating, cramping, all of those sorts of things can happen as the uterus and ovaries become more active, but you haven't yet had a period.
And is that cyclical as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you might see your daughter getting some bloating and some mood changes, and then a month later get the same, but still not have a period.
Absolutely. But because of how fluctuating this estrogen is, it doesn't necessarily have to be cyclical, because quite often, not always, but quite often when girls first get their period, it's not regular to start with.
Yeah, which I think is something that parents and girls are not aware of, and they will often go to the doctor worrying about these irregular periods, but it's completely normal, isn't it?
Yeah, so some girls are regular from day dot, and others it takes a little bit longer for that sort of system to mature and know what it's doing.
I think the interesting thing is that girls will grow about 10 centimeters in that 12 months before they get their period. So, you know, if your daughter has just shot up by about 10 to 12 centimeters, then you know that the period is just around the corner.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think it's important to let girls know about the discharge as well, because a lot of them freak out with that. They may not be feeling comfortable to talk about it, but that is just another sign that your period is not far away.
Yeah, which is probably, I mean, they talk about periods and everything in primary school, but I'm pretty sure they don't talk about the white discharge in primary school.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so then it's a bit of a, like, again, people think that they have thrush or something wrong with them like that.
Yeah.
And so I think that perimenopause gets wrongly blamed for way too many things. And I think it's the same with girls, that a lot gets blamed on hormones, but there can be other things going on. And if you just say it's hormones, then you might miss. So what other kind of issues like nutrient deficiencies, could get mixed up with hormones at this age?
Yeah, so I am so glad you brought this up. I actually support many women through perimenopause as well. And it is great that it's getting the attention it deserves now. Don't get me wrong, but all the memes and reels with 101 symptoms of perimenopause do not do us any favors. It is a time of misdiagnosis, the incorrect diagnosis, and completely misdiagnosis because everything is blamed on perimenopause. And I feel really, really passionate about that, but I digress and I will come back to pediatrics. Look, tween-teen behavioural issues are commonly caused by hormones, but we also know that nutrient deficiencies, poor liver detoxification, environmental toxins, heavy metals all play a role in hormone imbalance. So basic bloods, running a HTMA, hair tissue mineral analysis, gosh, making sure your bowels are moving daily, addressing the gut microbiome, optimizing health, it all goes to make sure that at this time of significant hormone fluctuations is going to be smoother, right? So by doing this, we may uncover some other important drivers that can be impacting mood and behavioral issues. So if we take something like zinc and B6 deficiency, for example, even if there are pyrroles, things like that at play, we know that low zinc and low B6 impact progesterone imbalance. So yes, there could be a nutrient deficiency at its core, but it is causing a hormonal imbalance. Low progesterone is severely linked with anxiety, but so is a zinc deficiency because at those times we can also accumulate more copper. High estrogen results in more copper accumulation in tissue, and the symptoms of that the most common symptom is social anxiety as well. So it's all interrelated, and just like everyone we see, by optimizing all aspects of health and treating people holistically, it's only going to make puberty and perimenopause a smoother transition.
And that's why, I mean, we do a hair tissue mineral analysis for pretty much every child who comes through our virtual doors, because you can see at a glance if they've got the copper, zinc imbalances and heavy metals and all those other things that might be an issue. Is there any other tests that you would commonly run, like blood tests?
You can do, depending what is going on. Just like with adults, doing hormone panels isn't always necessarily indicated, but I do love hair tissue mineral analysis. If we can follow that up with some good blood tests as well and get some blood levels of nutrients like iron, B12, zinc, and all of those things, that can be really helpful. And depending what's going on for the person as well, we know that the gut microbiome actually plays a huge role in hormone balance. If there is dysbiosis, some bacteria produce an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase, which actually impacts the excretion of excess estrogen from the system. It's to do with liver detoxification pathways of those hormones. And so if there is significant issues going on, then doing a gut microbiome test as well can be really helpful.
Yeah. And so puberty, you said the average age is about 12 in Australia, but it's getting earlier as time goes on. So what would you consider to be too early, and what are some reasons for this?
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. Puberty has gotten earlier, but some of this is a positive change, right? So in the 1800s and early 1900s, the average age of first periods in Western countries anyway was around 16 to 17 years old. And by the mid-1900s, that had already dropped to 14 years old just due to better nutrition. We were taller, bigger, had more body fat than we did in the 1800s. So that's actually a good thing. But higher body fat percentage is associated with early puberty. And what we know now is that average puberty has shifted even lower again to about 12. And things like obesity and things like that. So not a healthier increase in body fat, but that would be playing a role. So anyone who is getting their periods at age 8 or 9 is more common. Any earlier than that does require investigation. That's called precocious puberty. But I would argue that even though it is deemed normal for 8 and 9-year-olds now, that it's actually probably not ideal. So the food environment, obviously, that's going to play a huge role in that. And things like endocrine disrupting chemicals and toxins they interfere with hormonal pathways and accelerate puberty development. So that's things like your plastics and your BPA and your phthalates, and they're in the food, the water, the sunscreens, the makeup you put on your face. And psychosocial stress is another contributing factor. And I think, Lisa, one of your blog posts talks quite a lot about the impacts of that, which is really fascinating for most people to hear.
Yeah. And I think things like plastics are in our environments is something that we can change pretty easy. It's very difficult to change the psychosocial stress, but you can throw out the plastic water bottles, stop heating up things in plastic in the microwave. That's kind of low-hanging fruit, that if you see signs of puberty in your daughter when she's very young, that you can change those things straight away.
A water filter makes a huge difference as well. And I would also suggest, if you are seeing those really early signs and your daughter is quite young, organic chicken rather than conventionally farmed chicken and things like that can make a difference as well.
And it's so interesting because my mother got her period at 13. I got my period at 13 and my daughter's got theirs at 13. So it's like across, my mother's 85. So across like 70 plus years, we've held the same trajectory. It's kind of fascinating.
Well, they do say as well that the biggest predictor of when you will go through menopause is also when your mother did.
Yeah, and hopefully how that goes for you as well. So that's good.
Yeah.
So something that's had a big impact on my family is acne. So another kind of big issue for teenagers. And my dad actually was conscripted for World War II when he was 17, and he got rejected into the army because he had such bad acne on his back.
No way.
And they said they wouldn't let him, he didn't want to join the army, so he was delighted, but they wouldn't let him join because they said under the uniform and the hot clothes, it would get infected. And so his acne kept him out of the war, which is just wonderful. And then my mum had acne, my brother had acne, I had bad acne, and then I've passed that on to my kids as well. So when I was young, I guess there was no real treatment for that other than long-term antibiotics, long-term pill, and then Roaccutane. But God, there's so much that a naturopath can do to help with acne. So where would you start with a child with acne?
Oh, look, acne is actually one of my absolute favorite things to treat. And it's because I actually find it pretty easy. Naturopathically, we get some amazing results. So there are some key nutrients like zinc, vitamin A, and vitamin D that are an absolute game changer. It's always best to do a blood test for your zinc and vitamin D so that we can safely work out therapeutic doses for you. But after assessing these baseline levels, I use some pretty heroic doses in all of these nutrients in the short term and get amazing results. I also like to run salivary hormone panels, even in teens, to work out which pathways of hormone clearance and balance to support. So your estrogen and testosterone are the two main culprits, and we will put in place different supports depending on which hormone or hormones are out of balance. Diet plays a huge role as well, with A1 dairy being a really common trigger for some people because it increases something called insulin-like growth factor and inflammation. So for some people, just a dairy-free diet alone can be pretty phenomenal. Daily bowel movement's really important as well. That's obviously toxin clearance, a really important part of our hormone clearance as well as our toxin clearance. And so ideally, I like to run a gut microbiome analysis as well. Any inflammation in the gut will absolutely exacerbate the skin. And yeah, this approach has not failed me yet.
And what I love is that we're seeing that zinc is helping with the acne, it's helping with the mood. It's really, zinc's a bit of a no-brainer for our teenagers, isn't it?
Absolutely. So, so important. Teenage boys in particular need a huge amount of zinc, but very, very important for our teen girls as well.
Zinc makes you think. And stretch marks is a really classic sign as well as acne, that teenagers need more zinc.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, acne is a fascinating one. And sometimes it's even other things like mold can have an impact. If your child's skin isn't improving despite doing all kind of the normal naturopathic stuff, sometimes it's an environmental issue, which if you can work that one out, it's great.
Oh, absolutely.
So what other kind of hormonal issues do you come across in teenage girls?
Heavy and painful periods would probably be the most common thing. And usually they'll be taken to the GP first. They'll go and see a gynecologist, and gynecologists are very reluctant to do any investigations at all for teens. And they will commonly be prescribed the pill to balance their hormones.
Yeah. And so tell me, what is the pill actually doing? Because it ain't balancing hormones.
It's absolutely not balancing your hormones. What it's doing by providing synthetic versions of those hormones, due to the negative feedback loops in the body, once you provide those synthetic versions of the hormones, which are not the same as our endogenous hormones, it essentially shuts down and suppresses ovulation. So you are not producing your own hormones anymore in the presence of these synthetic hormones. So the hormonal system that takes quite a few years to mature is shut down, and the length of time that you were then on that pill, that is absolutely crucial years of learning for your body that you miss out of. And when you stop taking the pill, the body has got to do all of that all over again. Nothing has actually been addressed.
Yeah, and that's exactly what happened to me. I went on the pill at 17 for my skin, which triggered migraines, which I've had for the 30 years since. But then ultimately I had to come off the pill, and guess what? My acne just came back because I hadn't addressed any of the underlying drivers.
Yeah, I was the same. Pill at 17 because I had this dysfunctional uterine bleeding, incredibly irregular periods. And I was told that this was regulating my cycle. I got a period every month, which was just my withdrawal bleed because I stopped taking synthetic hormones for 7 days each month. And of course, I then went on to have fertility issues because my PCOS and insulin resistance that had never been diagnosed had not also been treated.
Yeah, so it truly is a Band-Aid approach, and not even a very good Band-Aid, really, because it causes so many other issues. And yet that's the treatment that, you know, teenagers are going to gynecologists, and this is what they're walking away with.
Absolutely. And I can't believe how young the girls are that are being prescribed the pill these days. I think it's different than when, certainly when I was younger. These are 13 and 14-year-olds who may have only had a period for a year, and they're being prescribed the pill.
Yeah. For how long? 20 years. And so what can parents do to help their children with heavy periods, painful periods, PMS? Like where would a parent start with this?
It sounds really, really boring, but a balanced diet makes such a big difference, right?
Yeah.
So increasing magnesium-rich foods, omega-3 fatty acids, vitamin B6, it's in bananas, sweet potatoes, chickpeas. It's really, really boring, but a balanced diet, limiting high sugar diets. As I said before, for some kids, removing dairy, absolutely amazing. Getting adequate sleep, huge for PMS, right? And something that loads of teens really aren't sleeping enough. They're on blue screens late at night. So even if they are sleeping, the quality of their sleep isn't great. So boring things like keeping devices out of the bedroom. Yeah.
So
yoga.
a daily slushy probably isn't a good move then.
No, probably not.
Or even, I'm not sure, but like, you know, acai bowls have gone absolutely nuts now, and they're probably very, very high in added sugar as well.
Absolutely. And I think people don't understand sometimes just how, calorific, but it's all of those sugars that are in there as well that is highly inflammatory and is not going to do any favors for PMS, absolutely. But yeah, painful periods is something that diet makes a huge difference. And the other thing that blows a lot of my clients' minds is we will often be working on the gut for other reasons, and they report that their period pain, which has always been incredibly severe, has absolutely cleared up. So making sure you address any gut issues is really, really important.
Yeah, I've seen that as well, where, you know, someone comes to see me for a gut issue, and all of a sudden they tell me that their painful periods aren't waking them up in the middle of the night. And we haven't even talked about that. So it's incredible.
Yeah.
And so speaking of pain, like how much pain is too much? And when do you think that you need to look into things like endometriosis?
Yeah, that's a good question, because it is tricky with teens because the whole system is all quite new. An element of discomfort and even pain can be normal for the first years of menstruation while the body adapts. So in a way that for an adult, I would say no amount of pain is normal. You do tend to get a little bit in some kids when they're first getting their period. And that's just because of these hormone-like chemicals that are produced in the body called prostaglandins. And what they do is cause strong contractions in the uterus in order for you to shed that lining. And that can lead to pain and discomfort. And as your body gets adjusted to that over time, that shouldn't be as painful. But yet estrogen receptors are all new and sensitive. And so for some kids, when they first get their period, there is a bit of pain. But any pain that keeps you from going to school or participating in normal life is not ever normal and can be due to different things. It may not be something like endometriosis. It could be increased pain perception due to stress. An inflammatory diet is going to increase your pain perception as well. But things like pelvic floor dysfunction can play a role. And then, as you mentioned, endometriosis, adenomyosis absolutely could be there, even in teens, especially if there's a family history of it.
And how would you support a teenager with pain? Like, rather than reaching for, the non-steroidal anti-inflammatories or some sort of drug, what else can you easily do at home to help with that?
Yeah, so simple things like a hot water bottle make a huge difference. Having a shower, a lot of girls get the pain in the back rather in the belly. So doing those sorts of things. Gentle exercise. I remember having quite bad period pain myself once when I was at a yoga detox retreat in Spain with goats in the mountains. And I had really bad period pain that time. And the yoga master there said to me, come on and get moving. It's stagnant energy. You will feel so much better. And I did the yoga class and could not believe that my pain vanished. I had everything moving. So sometimes we feel like we need to curl up into a little fetal ball and sort of protect ourselves with that pain. And that's the absolute opposite of what we would be doing. But yeah, if you are having continued long-term pain, as I said, diet, lots of omega-3s in your diet, reduce that. That is an anti-inflammatory action. And the gut work that we talked about, significantly reducing your pain. And the crazy thing with things like endo that blows my mind is that even in the present, so some people have debilitating pain with endometriosis. And yet so many people only find out that they have endometriosis when they've got this unexplained infertility and they're having investigations, 20 years later, which is fascinating. So we could do a whole podcast episode on endometriosis alone. But I will just quickly mention, for those who don't know, endometriosis is a disease in which tissue that is similar to the endometrial tissue grows outside of the uterus, and it can cause pain and a whole bunch of other symptoms, but it's actually an immune dysfunction condition. And so it's affected by hormones rather than being a hormonal condition itself. And a gynecologist will not investigate this for a teen. They just absolutely won't. They will not do, the gold standard is a laparoscopy where you actually have a little camera in and they have a good look around. They won't do that for teens. They will just prescribe the pill. And what's really important to know about endometriosis, I was actually just reading some new research Lara Bryden shared on the weekend about the bacterial theory of endometriosis. And this is not a new theory, but there's actually some new research that identified bacterial toxins from a specific bacteria called Fusobacterium. And it's been found to be the initiating factor in the immune dysfunction of endo for some people. And now this is a really highly inflammatory oral bacteria. It causes a lot of periodontal problems, but it's also associated with miscarriage, heart disease, all sorts of things. And we pick this up in the stool tests that we run. So I've seen it on a number of different stool analysis tests that we've done. But essentially any inflammatory bacteria that can produce these toxins, they're called LPS. And that can be bacterial dysbiosis in the vagina or in the gut. Any of these things can flare and drive endometriosis. So if you have a teen with heavy painful periods and the gynecologist won't investigate it, address it holistically, work on the gut microbiome, work on all these anti-inflammatory nutrients. And what you might find is that, yes, you can help with the pain symptoms right here and now, but you could also be helping prevent disease progression of something that you may or may not. You don't need to know if it's there or not in order to do those holistic approaches as well. So you could be changing the trajectory of someone's endometriosis without needing to know whether it's there or not.
And preserving their future fertility as well.
Absolutely, because whenever you just take the pill does not fix anything. It may not, it's immune dysfunction. So yes, there is a hormonal element and it may reduce symptoms and it may potentially slow progression, but it might not. You could come off the pill and find out that your endo is far worse than it was beforehand.
Yeah, so I guess the bottom line is if your daughter has painful periods, see a naturopath first, sort out the gut stuff, and then see what's left behind.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so what other sorts of issues do you see with teenage girls?
Anxiety is something huge, and a lot of this is to do with those hormonal changes. We get in perimenopause, a lot of us get a little bit more anxiety. So this could be tied into nutrient deficiencies, pyrols, hormones, all of those things, but also situational stress, right? I see loads of year 12 kids, they just need a little bit of situational support while they're going through exams and things. So anxiety is a big one. ADHD support in teens, sleep issues. Constipation is common in all ages and teens are no exception there. Lots of teens with constipation. Fatigue is a really big one with teen girls that we see quite a lot. That could be to like nutrient deficiencies in iron, B12, something like that. That could be co-current with your heavy periods or your gut issues. They'll often go hand in hand. And insulin resistance is something I'm seeing more and more often in teens. And that often presents with fatigue as the first symptom of why they're coming in, and we will identify insulin resistance as part of that picture. Insufficient fueling for dietary intake is huge, particularly in our sporty kids. So lots of nutrition coaching can be really helpful for teens. And related to that, quite sadly, is also disordered eating, and early eating disorders are something that I'm seeing more and more of.
Yeah, I mean, I always thought that eating disorders kicked in late teens, but I'm seeing people now, 11, 12-year-olds who've already got disordered eating, which is quite shocking because it's going to affect your growth trajectory and puberty and everything whenever
Absolutely. And obviously now these kids require acute support from people specifically trained in training that I don't have. But I do support quite a few teen clients with their ongoing eating disorder recovery, like as part of their multidisciplinary team, just making sure nutrients are adequate and taking a holistic view of their health and mental well-being while they're being seen by professionals. But it's something that people don't come to see me for eating disorder support, and nor should they, but it's something that I've picked up in a number of initial consults that the parents weren't aware what was going on.
Yeah, and it can escalate pretty quickly as well.
Yeah.
I think obviously the new laws around social media will be helpful, because I think a lot of it is driven by social media and just chronic stress and lots of different things, but it's a big issue.
Absolutely. And I think it's something that's just far more prevalent now than it ever was before.
Yeah. And there's a lot that we can do looking at neurotransmitters and everything, but as you say, the acute treatment definitely needs to be with a specialist in eating disorders. So that's wonderful. Is there anything else that you want to talk about that we haven't discussed already?
No, I think our teens are wonderful people. They can be challenging. But as with anyone, again, it's just taking that holistic support and not just writing it off as teen grumpy behaviour, which I think they cop a bit of stick, our poor teens, and they are one of my absolute favourite groups to work with.
Yeah, and I think setting the foundations when people are teenagers to really, make sure their mental health is optimum, everything else, their physical health is optimum. They can take that with them for the rest of their lives.
Yeah,
it's a good investment.
Absolutely. We don't have them under our roofs for much longer after that. So if you can use that time to really solidify some healthy behaviours, then absolutely it does them in such good stead.
Well, thank you very much, Kelly, for joining us again today. And no doubt we'll be talking to you again soon. If you do have a teenager and you would like some holistic support, you can contact the Paediatric Naturopath and we will choose the correct practitioner to help you with your teenagers. Thanks for tuning in to Holistic Health for Happy Kids. I hope you found today's episode helpful and inspiring on your journey to raise thriving, healthy little ones. Remember, small, consistent changes can lead to big transformations. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with other parents who might benefit. You can also follow me on Instagram and Facebook at the Paediatric Naturopath for more tips, tools, and inspiration. If you've got a question or a topic you'd love to hear about, please send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, take care and keep supporting your kids in the most natural, nurturing ways possible.